This week on the Markcast, we've got CFL end of year business wrapping up. A lot of moves, a lot of players being let go from their contracts, a lot of players, being re-upped, a lot of front office moves around Edmonton. We'll talk about all of that.
Yeah, we're talking CFL. We have CFL News Hub and XFL News Hub editor-in-chief, right? Mark Perry coming on our host site. We talk with Mark about XFL stuff, CFL stuff, and his fascination with fan control football. I don't really know. I'm going to have to dig into that. Well, what is up, my friends? We have the invasion. We have Mark Perry on, not your namesake, the Markcast, although there is some confusion about that. Realistically, how are you feeling about this? Because like I said, this isn't things that we talk about every day in the, so I don't know. What are you bullish on the USFL? What are we thinking?
I am. It's a battle of two different types of business plans. You have the slow build, Brian Woods, Fox element of it, and then you have the XFL coming right out of the gate, just like Vince did.
Also, we're going to talk XFL. We've got the Rock put out the clip. It got 2 million views. A lot of people are interested in the XFL and the technology behind the XFL. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in terms of legal stuff that we're getting into. In terms of patents that they've required and maybe not acquired, we'll determine that, and we'll get back to you on that. We've also got news about movement in the NFL. There's been a lot of player movement in the NFL. We'll talk about that as well.
That's a fun end of the year show. We got some voicemails, some well wishes. We're building traction on YouTube again, and we're going. It's all excitement going into 2022. So
definitely, we hope you tune in and like and subscribe to our podcast, and we'll see you this week on the Markcast. It's Friday morning. There's nothing going on. No CFL, no XFL. Wait a second. There was something, right? There was something that happened. Or did we talk about that already?
Did we talk about what?
We talked about the video that Rock was on.
We talked about The Rock. We have follow-up about that today. But we have a lot of news. I was putting together the show. A lot of CFL stuff, off-season notes, and then we have, obviously, Mark Perry, our commander-in-chief, coming on today. I thought that was a good spot. I've been on Mark's show before. He's never been on, and I just thought kind of year-end, we got some voicemails for us to play. We have some voicemails for Mark. People are using that. Paul, I did what you asked. You can go to themarkcast.com/voicemail and leave a voicemail.
There you go. Look at that. Nice little shortcut.
I thought that was a good idea. So I did that. I've updated the graphics. It's all good to go. How was your Christmas?
Really boring. And, I got, Nydia came over. We went to see Spider-Man because she hadn't seen it yet. So that was cool. Other than that, just nice chill. How about you?
Yeah, watched a lot of football. We watched the Matrix movie. Dorothy and I watched that the other night. That was a trip. Don't Look Up, though. I mean, that is, I don't see a lot of movies anymore. Best movie I've seen, and I couldn't tell you. I thought that movie was phenomenal.
Really?
With Leo DiCaprio.
Some people are saying no, and some people are saying yes.
Yeah, I just for my 2 cents, Don't Look Up. Adam McKay writes Step Brothers and all that. It's just a beautiful movie. I mean, maybe it was the drinks, but it was. We really enjoyed that. I thought it was good.
I'll have to check that out. The one that I saw was best film of the year for me was Coda. Children of Deaf Adults.
Dorothy just watched that. She said she gave it a thumbs up. She's listening to Joni Mitchell now. Is that related to that movie?
I don't know.
I think the song is in it because she came up.
It's in there, but it's not. I don't know. Anyway,
there we go. Merry Christmas. Like and subscribe. I just put a new channel trailer together, Paul. I sent that over, and Paul gave it a thumbs up. Like and subscribe. We're at like 1625 now. When we get 2,000, we have all of our Grey Cup merchandise we're giving away. So please like and subscribe. XFL stuff, obviously on the horizon here. USFL, CFL. No FCF news this week, but I'm sure they'll pop back up from time to time.
I'm sure they will. They'll either have a new season ready to go or delay. It's one of the two. Of course, John Madden passed away this week. Want to send condolences to his friends, family, his colleagues, everybody that ever worked with John Madden. A true pioneer, true legend, and a great brain of the game. And it's even though he's up there in years, it still feels too soon to lose someone like that. So rest in peace to John Madden.
Yeah, I just threw that in there. Figure we might as well just acknowledge that. So.
All right, so let's get on with the show. In CFL news, Ottawa Red Blacks punter Richie Leone is made an appearance on 1200's The Drive, TSN 1200's The Drive, and found himself faced with the question of the day concerning the excess of player movement in the CFL since the inception of one-year contracts.
Yeah, Richie's going on. I figured you'd like this because he says they're talking about the one-year contracts. They're talking about the marketing. We're trying to fix the game. What's going on? Richie Leone is a big fan favorite. He said they do absolutely nothing. He rips the league for lack of cool content. He says, I think it's up to the big brains at the league office, if you want to call it the big brains, to figure out what to do. I mean, look at a guy like me. Would I sign a couple of years in Ottawa? Absolutely good. We need guys to do that, but the league needs to change and it needs to be more beneficial for us.
That's fair. I mean, we've discussed how much they're not marketing to the general public and using social media to their advantage. I mean, that stupid video, the guy dunking a cookie upside down, went completely viral. If they had more stuff like that, people might get more interested in their league.
We live in an age where it doesn't cost too much. It's certainly not difficult to produce content. There's 7-year-old boys and girls that make TikTok videos that go viral, and we can't even get anything out there that's cool. He finna, obviously frustrated. Make something cool, guys. I challenge you on that. I just think it's interesting, the pieces are there if they want to grab them, right? I mean, the CFL, Ottawa did some cool, like when they announced the season this year. They remember the What's Up from not the Scream movies, but the scary movies. Remember when they all did the What's Up? Like Ottawa did a whole thing about that. Like they're trying, right?
20-year-old commercial.
Yeah. I mean, they're trying, but it's, you have talented guys and girls like in the offices there. It's just hard though, where there's is that a Commissioner Ambrosi role? Like trying to kind of gain that go, it's so fragmented, all the teams. Like you have the Argos, right? That do a really good job with social media. We have obviously Matt Baker with the BC Lions, but then I don't know. I never see Edmonton post anything. So
they have a culture situation.
Well, we have Edmonton news coming up here.
Might not be in the culture to have social media presence like that. So, speaking of the Argos, they released star defensive end Charleston Hughes. He signed a 2-year contract with them in February. He had 1 year left on it, worth $145,000 in hard money, and he was released.
See how that works? The whole 2-year contracts, and then. Yep. So, that's the thing. They talk about this. Oh, he signed to a 2-year deal, a lot of money. Well, he didn't play a lot this year. He was a healthy scratch a bunch of the games. I think I have the number on here. I think he played in 9 games. He played 9 games with the Argos this year. This could be it for him, right? 38. He was a big signee. I think he's close to breaking the sacks record. So there was a lot of movement on that, but. There you go. 2-year contract, cut him in the offseason. Who cares?
Again, I go back to the baseball model. Like they can choose to tender your contract even if you're like 4 years in on a 9-year deal. They can choose to not tender your contract. This happens in MLB too. So this is nothing new. It's just I think it's more amplified because it's they're only doing 1 or 2 year contracts, it seems, and I think it's more amplified in the CFL right now because it's just like you go play somewhere for one year and then you're done. And it just seems like there's a lot of moving people. So Elks releasing a former outstanding offensive lineman. His name is Derek Dennis. He's a 33-year-old. He originally signed as a free agent in January, but decided to step away from football and then, requested a release or a trade from the team a week after signing his contract.
Yeah, Derek, remember, we've tracked all this. So Derek's going to come on the show here in a couple of weeks. I've been talking with Derek. And then also, I'm just going to put out there, Vernon Adams, I think we've got him signed up to come on next week. We kind of teased that, previous week. Vernon's been traveling. So I think Vernon, if you have questions for Vernon, I think that's a big get, right? CFL, star quarterback. Derek Dennis is going to come on too here in a couple of weeks. He was the one that really wanted to get released. They wouldn't let him go. He tweeted it was one of those release, what was it, free OBJ, right, with the Rams or with the Browns? Same kind of thing, right? Like Derek Dennis, free Derek Dennis. Now he's gone, and now he can sign. I tweeted maybe he should go to the USFL.
Possibly. I mean, he wanted to be traded a week after he signed his contract. Clearly, he saw something in that first week. He was like, this is bad. This is very bad. And I mean, this rolled out throughout the course of the season. We heard a lot of problems about, people not getting vaccinated that were in higher up management positions, Jamie Elizondo, the list goes on. He probably did it a week there and was like, "This is really bad. I gotta get out of here. This culture sucks."
It's like Arrested Development. I've made a terrible mistake.
In hopes to promote and encourage a positive working environment, the Edmonton Elks have officially named Geroy Simon, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, as assistant general manager to play a role under general manager head coach Chris Jones. He joins Edmonton after spending the last 7 seasons as part of your BC Lions that are not America's CFL team. He was most recently the director of global scouting and the United States regional scout.
Yeah, Edmonton trying to build back up. I have another story here. Oh, I think I didn't copy and paste it correctly. We have. I'm going to skip down here. Oh, I did do this twice. I added this story twice. I'm sorry about that. The other thing about that is talking with Ian Murray, who is the Elks board chair. This is down on page 5. I think, Paul, I messed that up. They're just talking about, it's going to be a 5-6 year build to really kind of rehab the Edmonton Elks thing that obviously they've lost a lot of season ticket support, a lot of fan support, things like that. And he was interviewed on TSN 1260. It's not going to be an overnight fix. So bringing G-Roy on, new coach, Chris Jones, all that stuff. It's all going to kind of build this, the trust back up with the team. So
it's incredible what 1 year under the wrong people did for this franchise. It's incredible how much damage was done in that 1 year. So because Chris Jones went to become head coach of the Elks, of course, the Argos now have to fill the position of defensive coordinator. And let's see here who they got. They got a contract with Corey Mace, who spent 4 seasons with the let's see.
He was with the Stamps, and then before that, he was with the Buffalo Bills. Russ Brandon, remember the whole XFL. All these people are connected. All these webs and whatever. But yeah, he's coming in to replace Chris Jones. Big shoes to fill, right? Chris, now is with Edmonton, but. Lots of time with the Stampeders, lots of time with the Buffalo Bills. 6 years as a player and 5 as coaching with the Stampeders. So there you
go. General Manager Jeremy O'Day from the Rough Riders said that there was a total of 6 Riders players that were lost to torn Achilles tendons during the course of the season. Of course, maybe that was a reflection of the short preseason they had where they weren't able to get up to speed quite the way they wanted to. He said that we probably matched or went ahead of the amount of Achilles that I've seen in my whole career in 1 year. It's not a real common injury. You might see 1 or 2 a year, and this was a lot different than the number we had. It's about reattaching it and starting the rehab on it. Again, 6 went down. This could all be, because of conditioning and trying to get up to speed in terms of getting ready for the season.
Yeah, he just had his end of the year address, and so that was brought up again because that was a major preseason thing. So it's kind of rounding out that conversation. I don't. Good luck with this first name. This is tricky. BC Lions.
Isaiah
Mizem.
Isaiah Mizem. Okay.
Mizem.
The BC Lions have signed a pair of key depth players for the 2022 season. American offensive lineman Phil Norman and national linebacker Isaiah Mizem. I need a pronouncer on that.
Matt Baker, help us on that.
Yes. They've also confirmed the extension of veteran American wide receiver Dominique Rhymes. BC Lions making some moves here.
Yeah, re-signed a bunch of people. BC Lions have a big rebuild too. I mean, there isn't the Edmonton cultural issue there, but there is a lot of issues on that team that they really need to figure out here. So I'm glad that they're doing all that.
In light of Orlando Stenauer possibly going to UW, didn't end up doing that. They've given him a new title in Hamilton. He is now the president of football operations and their head coach.
Yeah,
so Orlando.
So you're well, I wonder why he stayed. Well, there you go. Probably. Hey, well,
more money.
Keep you here, right? We'll give you more power, give you more responsibility, give you more money. And because it really did sound that was getting picked up everywhere that he was going to go to the University of Washington. So anyway, there's press release here if you don't want to talk about it. But anyway, Orlando Steinhauer getting more power there.
And during the Grey Cup game that Stenauer's unfortunately lost with his Hamilton Tiger Cats, they had made a decision to take a knee, and that's been highly debated by fans ever since outside of Hamilton as well. Apparently, a special teams coach and Orlando Stenauer are lockstep, and both were cool with what happened with taking the knee.
Yeah, they gave up the point, on the kickoff, took the rouge. He was on Rod's show, Jeff Reinbold. He's he's really popular special teams coach, and he was saying, we're lockstep and everything. There was no problem. I mean, that's why they lost the game, because the field goal at the end tied the game, would have won. But it's interesting that people are still talking about this. I mean, obviously it's the CFL offseason, but, it's like the 13th man back in the day. I mean, that's kind of why they lost the game, and that's why that game will be remembered, the 108th Grey Cup. So.
Speaking of Canadian rules in football, did you see the Ravens and Bengals had 12 players on the field?
Yeah, I figured you get a kick out of this.
Yeah. I mean, it happens, sometimes, you don't have the right personnel and you don't break the huddle correctly. And then all of a sudden you have 12 players in the field.
Yeah. Oh,
it's an unfortunate thing.
This was a laugh a minute. I saw this go all over CFL Twitter. This was, who do they think they're playing? The Ravens and But it was interesting this both teams. I mean, that's pretty boneheaded.
Yeah.
On the same play.
Exactly. People just weren't, I don't think that people were there like during that weekend. People kind of, I saw a lot of stupid things go down on Christmas and the weekend. So it's just like, maybe it was just par for the course.
But just speaking of the Ravens, Josh Johnson came in, did respectable for them, right? I think they scored, 2 TDs, but when you lose, when your defense gives up, I think it was 41 points. Like, it's very hard for Josh Johnson to let's be real.
Overcome that. Yeah, that's very true. And, there's a chance that Lamar Jackson might not go again this week. So
I guess he was hobbling, they said he came back to practice and he was hobbling on the sidelines. I'm like,
that might need to shut him down for the rest of the year. I mean, depending on how your fortunes favor out in terms of playoff seeding and playoff race, it might be just better to just sit him for the rest of the year and see what you can do in other aspects. Can Josh lead you possibly to, conference semifinal? Who knows? Who knows?
Well, they got Tyler Huntley. I mean, I think Tyler Huntley's got a new job after this, whenever his contract's up in Baltimore. I mean, I think he has proven himself to be a capable starting quarterback too. So
definitely. I saw this and I thought of all of our Canadian friends, the IIHF, the International, so the juniors, the hockey juniors, right? Yes. This is what this is. They canceled due to COVID-19. The cases are out of control. We just set a record here in the United States yesterday with over 440,000 new COVID cases because everybody's getting tested because Omicron and thing is spreading like wildfire. Well, so they did cancel the remainder of the World Juniors Hockey due to the pandemic.
The International Ice Hockey Federation. It's interesting. Just the reason I put this in here is they released the CFL schedule a couple weeks ago, and everyone's going crazy. And it's like this is written in paper right now, or it's written in pencil, whatever the saying is. Like this is, I mean, we can say CFL or Grey Cup or all these different things, but like. You don't know. We don't know. And so it's just something to keep in mind in the back of your head. I mean, this is everyone's there playing. I mean, they were in tournament when all this was going on. And just something to keep in mind as we move forward with all these leagues. But, XFL, that's why they presumably kicked to 2023 is you have maybe a little bit more time, right, to figure out all this stuff. But, we've had a year and a half. It's crazy. I'm
hoping that, like, after the holidays, after we see the wave from the holidays, because everybody's traveling to go see their family. It's been 2 years. They're just like, we want to go see our family for Christmas. This thing is stupid. Let's just do it. People are just not, and the CDC's changing the guidelines. Now you only have to quarantine for 5 instead of 10. So it's just like, I want to see what this wave does after the holidays. And then if it goes right back down really low, then I think that I don't want to say we're past the worst part of it because God knows we've all said that time and time again, but I'm hoping this wave is potentially the last wave. Folks, just get vaccinated, please. Please. All right. Coming up right now, we're going to take a break, do some commercials, come back. Reed's going to talk to Mark Perry.
Lots to say. Should be good. Should be a lively conversation. I'm excited to get Mark on. We don't talk shop a lot. Like we're not like Mark and I are just sitting around like talking about XFL stuff all the time. So I'm really curious. Plus, he said he was fascinated by what FCF is doing lately. So I really am going to have to.
I want to hear about that.
Hammer him on that. So there you go.
I want to hear about that. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Well, what is up, my friends? We have the invasion. We have Mark Perry on, not your namesake, the Markcast, although there is some confusion about that. Thank you for coming on the show, Mark. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing great. We're closing out the new year, and I thought this was a great idea to have the Family Guy Simpsons crossover. And I've said I am a Family Guy diehard fan, so I have to be the Family Guy side of this.
That's good. Crossover. Yeah. We have Family Guy barging in the door of the Markcast. But this is good because, like, I think people think that we just, like, sit around and, like, BS about, like, we really don't. I mean, even the chat that we're in, like, the news hub chat is a lot of, like, oh, hey, did you see that? Did you see? It's not a lot of, like, prognosticating, right? Like, well, what do you think is going to happen with all that? So I think this is a good spot.
Yeah. And I think I just want to point out before the show starts, this is how far back that I've met Reed. Does this look familiar?
Well, that's what I was going to say, that we've actually been in person together one time at Walters at the XFL kickoff back in DC.
That's right.
That you were huddled in the corner trying to do the live show, and I came in and I said, you don't know me, but I listened to the show and you're doing it very good. It's all full circle. And now who would have thought that we're together and talking about going to the Grey Cup next year? So it's crazy.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's just to point out, is you never know. And one of the things that I've been told by people from the XFL and the USFL is that this world that we're in is very small, and they all know each other and they all travel in the same circles. And that, just to keep that in mind as you, for some of those out there who, tend to hate on sometimes, just remember, like, this is a small world out there, and the USFL and XFL, they're all watching.
They're watching. Yeah. Anyway, but I had given listener Van wrote in the voicemail last week. So Mark still has your hat. So there we go. We're all connected. So first
I just real quick, I wear this. So this is my running hat, and we'll be wearing this as me and my wife go to Disney in January 9th to run the Disney Marathon. So I will be wearing this hat.
Well, there you go. It's traveling the world.
That's it.
So
just one point that.
So first off, I guess the news just came out because Paul and I got done doing the main portion of the show. XFL has officially posted their first job posting. So why don't you fill us in on that?
So basically, Jake Henry, of course, find this out because we were just discussing that. That's all he does: hit refresh on some of this stuff, which is awesome, and that's one of the things I love about this XFL community. But basically, it is a finance guy in New York, but the job actually could be remote, but they would prefer in the tri-state area. So it kind of gives you an idea that potentially, there could be the XFL taking up shop at Redbird Capital building, because they're in New York too. We saw that picture with Danny the Rock and Jerry Cardinal with the Hulk thing. And I was wondering, where did that Hulk come from? And actually found out that it was from inside that building at Redbird Capital. So maybe and this is the first job posting. I mean, it's a couple days before the new year. I didn't think we would see anything until January, but something that Mike Mitchell had talked about on your show, which was a great episode. He's full of information. Is, these guys they're all in. And something that I mentioned on my podcast was like, if you were to take a tally of the USFL hires versus the XFL people hire, you see that the XFL has hired a ton of people, and they keep going. I haven't seen any USFL job postings or hirings except for the initial couple guys when the league started.
Yeah, so there's so many different ways that we could go with all this, and I want to get into, because I listened to your show, as I always do, but this week, about your fascination with the FCF. So I want to get into that because that scares me, but we'll table that till the end. I guess USFL, right? Because that's first and foremost here. I mean, realistically, how are you feeling about this? Because, like I said, this isn't things that we talk about every day in the So I don't know. Like, what are you bullish on the USFL? What are we thinking?
I am. It's a battle of two different types of business plans. You have the slow build, Brian Wood's, Fox element of it, and then you have the XFL coming right out of the gate, just like Vince did. The question is, who is going to last longer? I'm unclear. It sounds to me, from talking to people around the USFL, when people start to talk to people from the USFL, they get a sense that these guys are all in, and they have a big vision. This isn't the USFL, this isn't the spring league anymore. And that Fox is really into this stuff. And one of the things I didn't realize, and I saw it in an article somewhere like streaming.com or something like that, where they mentioned the Fox betting app as part of one of the reasons why the Fox is so into the USFL. And I was like, that is a good point. I didn't think about the Fox. It's like Bet Fox Sports or something like that. So that plays a role. So they are serious about getting involved. And really, at the end of the day, it's a battle of two business plans. My thing all along is, I just don't know I don't think these two leagues could survive going head to head do you think that the XFL and USFL could survive going 10 years head to head?
I mean, the question is, I think it's the staff and the coaches, because I think there's enough player talent, right? I think there's enough college, and like we've talked, D2, and I'm not I went to Gonzaga, so I'm not the biggest like college football kind of guy, but I think that there's enough of that, but it's coaches, right? It's quality coaches and trainers and staff. I mean, it's not just the, like Danny and The Rock or whoever owns it, right? I mean, there's 500 people that are going to be associated with the league, and it's finding, I don't know. I mean, they're not going to be competing time-wise, which I think is good. I think that the April USFL actually is a lot better than the February XFL.
Yeah, I agree. I was hoping that the XFL would move. I mean, and we know from being at that first couple games in DC, it was freezing. And I was like, just play. What are you so concerned about with Major League Baseball? And just get away from March Madness, and then go head-to-head with baseball. You'll be fine, especially if they're on strike. So I think that was a good move by the USFL. It's just, I think the XFL, it kind of feels like they're just sticking with the original plan that Vince and Oliver Luck and Jeffrey Pollack developed.
Which is weird. That's weird to me. Like, it's weird. And even when they came out with the February thing, was it 2-3 weeks ago? Like, I was really surprised with that. I'm like, oh, we're just like, because we, I mean, a million years ago now, when Paul and I started the podcast, our first episode was like, well, they're going to start it in February and they're going to run it back. And then the CFL and everything else has happened. And now they are just running it back. Depending on the cities. But it's weird to go that far just to be still the Sunday after the Super Bowl or Saturday.
Yeah. But I think the initial run is to play it safe. And that's why people are like, oh, there's going to be 10 teams. I wouldn't be, and no big moves. I think it's like, hey, let's, people within the XFL during the time of the bankruptcy stuff were telling me that, hey, the lights are ready to be turned on at any moment. Like, it's somebody could buy it, flip the switch, and it's all systems go. And I think do you know what that YouTube doesn't like us to say played a factor in that, and kicking it to the curb or a little bit long, or punting, I should say. And then the whole CFL thing also, I think that was a good exercise and it worked in their benefit to kind of push things aside. So could you imagine trying to launch the XFL right now in February with all this craziness going on?
It's just, it's weird. I don't know. We were talking with all this, bringing this stuff back up in the new cities, and just, I don't know if it makes enough of a movement if they're just like, well, the 8 teams are back, or, and I think I talked with Mike about it, like, okay, well, it's not Houston, it's San Antonio now. Like, does that move the needle enough that it's just, we're, like you said, we're flipping the switches back on?
Yeah, I think so. One of the interesting things about being part of this stuff from the beginning was fans were get really interested and involved when it comes to cities and team names and uniforms. Then they're interested in the draft, and then they're interested in games. So to tease this out for a while, I think is good. If the XFL just says, hey, we're going to do 8 teams to start off. However, next year we're bringing in 2. All those people will still be sucked in. They'll be ready to rock, and like they'll still be in. If you just tease that out there, and I think it makes sense if you're doing television and you're doing a big, behind the scenes show that Mike has kind of talked about, and you're doing that, why would you want to also include expansion in your first season of television? All you need is just the league coming back. In season 2, the tease of the 2 new cities is enough to carry you into season 2. That's why I was like, I think 8 is fine. I mean, the cities were great. I mean, especially like St. Louis. I think you got to start the season off, and St. Louis is the first game, and let that sucker fill that arena fill. And then LA was kind of meh, and the Vipers, Houston, and I also really think that the USFL and XFL, like, again, they're small worlds. There is no doubt in my mind that they talked, and they don't want to go head to head with each other in the same markets.
Was it surprising to you as it was to me that Mike Mitchell said that within the last year and a half, there was a point where they were thinking about not bringing back the XFL? Because as someone that podcasts about it every week, I was like, oh, wow, this is terrifying that we were on the brink of like Tony Soprano, the gun was pointed, and they didn't pull the trigger, whatever. But I mean, was that surprising?
No, because that was something that Mike and I discussed at the time. We were talking about, stuff was going on with the CFL, and then we were having a conversation, and he was kind of telling me what you guys, he filled everybody in later. From my conversation with him back then, it was like a 50-50 thing. And I was like, oh, there's no way that they're going to do that. And then, they kind of just forgot about their Houston Roughnecks logo, or the DC Defenders thing with the Washington football team and all this stuff. And I was like, and based on that, plus my conversations with Mike, I was like, I wonder if something is amiss here. And then they tried to go with the CFL thing, and then that didn't fall. And then, but in the beginning, the whole thing is, could they get a TV deal? And that was my fear, is that for some reason they couldn't get a TV deal. And maybe behind the scenes we'll find out, like with Fox coming in and being able to land something with NBC, did that all of a sudden flip the switch? And now, others are like, oh, well, if they're going to do it, we need something now. Like, how did that all play into it? But yeah, there was a little, with my conversation to him, I would say he was more negative than positive when it came to if the XFL was going to continue. But you got to remember, that was a time when Jeffrey Pollock was transitioning out. And then we found later that he had kind of been out of the loop for a while, kind of moved on in his own direction. The guy was working crazy hours all to get this bankruptcy, and then to, get to the Rock and Redbird Capital and Danny Garcia. So he was kind of phased out. And then it was kind of like, who's in charge, or who's going to be the person. And they had kind of paused that search. So it was in flux. And I don't blame them for taking a step back after the CFL stuff and being like, okay, are we going to do this or not? So who knows? Maybe the USFL gave them the nudge that they needed. I don't know.
It is. And that was going to be my question, was with this big deal, right, with the NBC, Fox and all of that. With the question of the XFL TV deal, it's like people are Netflix is giving Martin Scorsese, $350 million, go make a 5-hour movie. Like people are just, it's so content driven right now, right? WWE, $1 billion, right, for this. And no one is watching the WWE right now. They're watching the AEW and everything else, but I'm like, you can't tell me that they can't get, whatever for 1 million viewers a week, or with these. That to me was always, but I guess that wasn't always a given, or they were shopping around. It just seems weird.
Yeah. I think The Rock and Danny Garcia could go to any television network and streaming service and be like, we're just going to film The Rock just drinking his tequila and Zoa for half an hour. Do you guys want it? And they'd be like, yes, we'll take it. That's the part where I was like, it would blow my mind that they weren't able to land some kind of major TV deal, especially with the idea of this league being kind of a 24/7 league and, year-round content. And I'm sure people were willing to do deals with them. It's giving them the money that they wanted to do it. I think that was the key. Like, everybody was like, yes, we'd absolutely do it. Are we going to give you $200 million for 3 years? Maybe not, especially given this climate. But live sports is it. What else you got? Honestly, does anybody out there, and you can leave a message in the chat if you want, do you even watch regular, ABC, NBC, Fox programming, or is it all streaming? For me, Family Guy and sports, that's it. I don't watch NCI Europe and NCI Switzerland, wherever,
Vegas,
the 10 district version, all that stuff. Yeah. Or network news. Even ESPN. There's talk about, Disney ditching ESPN. That's a huge thing that's been out there. That's been talked about for a while. So the landscape is changing, and The Rock and Danny Garcia have got content. Somebody's got to pay for it.
It's weird, looking at both these leagues, right? And my favorite metaphor I've said about this is, right, XFL is like the Matrix, right? And we have layers of layers and layers. And we just saw the new Matrix, and it's a horrible movie, but
it is.
Yeah, it's really bad. It's like really? Remarkably bad. But then did you like Matrix? Did you like when they were in the cave in the Matrix? That's a lot of we're in the cave. It's a lot of
gotcha.
It's not a lot of kung fu and stuff. But but then you have the USFL that's like caveman, right? We're football, whatever. But it does seem like both of these teams, I'm torn, because it seems like the USFL, like you said, they're all in. They have people, Fox people are very invested. They're running the ads and all of that. But then we have like this shop and a website. It doesn't compute right with what they seem to be projecting. Like that to me is the most alarming. Like it's two minds. I'm like, is this the same company? Like, is this Brian Woods like selling these out of his basement? Like it's very weird.
Yeah, I think especially, and even to tie into the CFL, it's like people always complain about the CFL and that the marketing, because they don't have any money to hire people to do any marketing. Even though it would be easy, you could probably get an intern to do it for free. For whatever reason, and that's a critique. I think even in the USFL, we look now, we basically all we know is that there's 5 people. So I don't think, and if they're trying to do a shoestring budget and trying to do things on the cheap. Now, I'm with you with the merch part, because it's like, dude, that's an easy money right there. You could give, a couple $1,000s to some web company and they could spin you up a nice, site. But I mean, they don't want to buy all the merch. You know what I mean? Right this second. So like, I get that part. Maybe it will change as the league gets closer, because the other thing is like us nerds are all into, everything that's going on now, but we're really a fraction of what the audience will be when the games start to play. I mean, I remember the build up to the XFL where it was, it was a huge spike in traffic. It was like one of our biggest months was when the XFL had its draft and when they announced teams and cities and all that stuff. And then it was kind of like dead, and even training camp. I was like, where's all the interest? And then, man, it's like a week before the game started. It was like, through the roof, servers crashing. Like I was crashing at that game, and I was kept rebooting it because to get a comeback. I finally figured out everything that was wrong with it. So I think they know that too. So right now, is it worth, going all in with some of this merch and, marketing stuff? Wait until you're ready to go in April. I think you could see a new store, March, April time, before the season starts. Maybe they're just kind of like, hey, we'll make a little money off of this, but maybe we'll go big. Or maybe they just keep it small this year and wait till next year after, it's done. And then maybe they can get a partner, like we assume that The Rock and Under Armour will do something with the XFL. I think it's just a budget thing. I think there's just not a lot of resources that they're putting into that, even though that's an easy win and cash in your pocket.
I was just looking here while you were talking. So, because Richard, our listener, Richard won that, he won his beanie from our giveaway last week. So I ordered my USFL hat and I was order 1002, right? Because they start, this is the secret, if you run a small business, never start your invoice right with 1. You start it with like 677 or whatever. So they don't, your customers don't know, right? So the hat I bought was 1002. And I presume 1 was like a test order, because I know that XFL Newsroom, I think was 3. So the hat I bought Richard Monday was order 215. So it's shocking to you or not that less than 250 people have purchased USFL merch in the last month?
I mean, that's especially if that those places. I couldn't imagine the XFL did those kind of numbers when they announced their. I'm sure the XFL was thousands and thousands of pieces of merch.
It's interesting because it's order 215. So that means if I was whatever.
And I'm in there too. I'm probably in the 200s.
Yeah,
I ordered a hat like a week or so.
So so I'm just saying. I mean, it is interesting with that. The whole USFL of it is weird. Like, because when Brian came on our show, like it feels like forever ago. Like it felt like he laid out a lot of the stuff, right?
He did.
I mean, and like I have posted that again and again. And like people, like we don't understand. I'm like, well, he literally just laid it out 20 minutes driving in his car whenever he did that interview. Like. Really weird now, but it is all coming. Do you worry about that jump from year 1 to 2?
That's the one thing with the TV business that we've seen, especially if this is considered like a TV show for them, which I think it's more of than just a TV show, because they have the gambling app. And I mean, the value in getting people to jump from DraftKings or any other of these platforms to their own platform is, I mean, I've talked to people in the gambling business and they're like, it's easily $100 to $200 a person easily to acquire
Oh, the
these
cost to
companies
acquire.
the cost to acquire, like they're willing to spend $200 a person to bring them in. So that in itself to me is a huge thing. But what if, the guys who are in charge now decide to leave and go to Netflix, or, that's the part that concerns me, is like everybody's all in who works for Fox now. And I assume they've been here for a while. What if the powers that be upstairs decide they want to, the ratings haven't been good and they're ready to like get rid of everybody? Then the USFL is gone. Like, so that means to me that it's fragile, but you could argue that the XFL is fragile too. If Redbird decides, hey, we're done with this and we don't want to do it anymore, like the same thing could happen. But it's really going to come down to, I think they'll do fine. I think the ratings will be good. I think everybody will be happy. It's what's going to happen after year one. If we're going to be in a hub city again, then I'm concerned. If they're like, all right, we're going to go out to like their plan is to at least 2 different cities, and if they've said that they're going to add teams, then I think we're a good sign. So I think they'll make it through the season. It's what happens post-season is really going to be the key, because now you'll also have to compete with the XFL and their players. And here's something actually I just thought about now. If you're on a shoestring budget and I've heard whether, that the USFL will pay its players well. I have heard that. But let's say if they're on this shoestring budget and there's not a lot of revenue coming in there's no ticket sales, and how are they going to be able to compete with players when the XFL comes on and they have, this programming and they've got merch from, Under Armour there, and there's a ton of revenue coming in, because we know the XFL was profitable, despite what anybody says, from about as inside as you could. The XFL was profitable after even 5 weeks. And it was just, there was tweaking or whatever, but there was absolutely going to be a season 2. They were already planning it. Like everything was good. Like they have the business model that will work, and they were making money in year 1. So that's going to be how they're going to compete with players. I mean, you need season ticket revenue, and you're not going to, I'm going down to Alabama for a weekend to check out these games. I mean, I've already kind of laid out the plan for the year with my wife. I'm like, there's going to be a lot of football, so get ready. And she's like, hey, cool. A nice trip in a nice hotel. She's good. So, and she likes football too. So how are they going to make a lot of revenue off of when it comes to, ticket sales and merch? Like that's the year 2 part. And that's why I'm like, fine for year 1, year 2. I'm concerned. I'd be curious to see how it goes.
Because, I mean, like you said, a couple things. USFL abandoning ship, right? Because a lot of that's been made too. Like, Danny and The Rock, when all the CFL stuff was going on. Danny and The Rock, they could just walk away tomorrow, right? They only spent $15 million, plus the debt or whatever. But with the USFL, because I'm thinking about this too as we talk, because, there's been a lot of questions. Well, how are they going to do this? I'm like, Brian Woods did it like 3 times with cardboard and duct tape, and did it. But like you said, they weren't paying the players, right? And 500,000 viewers on Fox is good when you have free talent, right? Because the idea, reality TV, right, which sports, the USFL feels like it's a mix, right? It's kind of sports, but it's also like it's really cheap to produce Big Brother, right? Because we don't, you don't pay. So now we have a football league, but if we're paying the players, you're losing that one benefit of having like cheap talent that we don't have to pay for. So I don't know. I am concerned. I think that the ratings would have to be probably substantially bigger, right? I mean, I'm thinking through this as we're talking. I mean, realistically, what is that, 450,000 a week? I mean, that's not going to fly when you're paying full staffs and stuff and players.
Unless they have people that were lined up to buy a stake in the league and want ownership and are willing to put in money. And maybe this first season also is like a show. Like, hey, this is the product that you'll get. It's hard to convince somebody who's never seen your product to invest in it. But after the first year, they could be like, hey, this is what we put on. This is what we have. Why don't you invest $100 million and buy a franchise and start it going? I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I talking through that, I worry a little bit more because, like I said, there were no expectations for the spring rig, right? It's like we're not marketing it, we're just putting it on. We're not even doing interviews. You want to talk to our players? I mean,
Yeah.
It was like crazy time. We were trying to like track down, like, can we, trying to get Cole Boozer or trying to get like Stan on the show, trying to get Coach Mummy. Like it was like pulling teeth to get them. I'm like, just pick availability. Just say we're doing interviews from 4 to 5 and just we'll hop on a time. But the inability, it seemed like, for them to want to market. But now there's just so many more eyeballs. I wonder the USFL of it, if they had just called it the Brian Woods Football League, if that would have been having these expectations.
Yeah, and I think something that Mike had said too is that there's a lot, there's other players in the game now, and trying to build this league up, and they're all in. So I think, for us, I've said before that the spring league helped keep the lights on during a dark period where there was nothing going on, and there was interest. Anytime those games were on, especially if they're on, if they were on regular versus cable, whatever the deal was. It was like when it was on Fox, even if it was like at 2:00 on a Saturday on Fox, traffic just just shot up, and it was people looking up the players. But yeah, getting the stats was in a spreadsheet after the game and all that stuff. But I think like if you're trying to do the shoestring and build it, the idea for them is like, well, yeah, now it's going to be low, but in 5 years, we'll have a staff and we'll be able to pay. It's like just a slow growth, which is what he explained on his podcast. So all these moves make sense based on what he said on your show all those months ago, which was it's a slow build, and that's their business model.
Yeah, I think calling it USFL is the problem because you're setting expectations.
Yeah, people are still. We haven't heard, when the we all know Alabama will be the spot. So we haven't heard anything about that. We're getting close. And I think it's a problem because people, like you said, aren't as excited as they are about an XFL team coming to St. Louis or New York because they know they can go see them, where this is like, okay, cool. But, it's going to be a lot of wait and see when it comes to the USFL.
If you had to plant your flag on, because obviously we know the USFL team cities, right? We're southeast. It's weird. It's a lot of NFL things. I think you said on your show you think Houston, right? A necessary move for the XFL. Any other obvious ones that you would replace here as we get ready for this announcement, which is coming soon, which is actually very exciting to think that we're actually getting, You're
talking about the XFL teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really believe, because again, this is a small world, that there's no doubt in my mind that they talked to each other and said, "This, what do you want to do? This is what we're doing. This is what you're doing. Let's stay out of each other's way." There's no way that if the Roughnecks and the Gamblers were in Houston, would help either one of them. That's why people are like, "I can't believe the USFL didn't put a team in St. Louis." XFL was not giving up that ground.
You mean USFL? Yeah.
USFL, yeah. But I based on what we know about San Antonio, which was that San Antonio was being talked about during the XFL season, and the assumption was that Dallas was going to move to San Antonio at the time. But now that you have the Houston aspect of it, you don't have Oliver Luck involved anymore. Which, Houston had training camps. Houston had the championship game. They were playing in a college stadium. Somebody pointed out somewhere, talking about the different, what was it? The different size of the markets, where Houston is bigger market than San Antonio or something like that. The market size is something.
Houston's a big market.
So, you want to be in there. However, and I think they did well. I never heard anything negative about Houston. Maybe now that Oliver Luck's not involved, they don't want to deal with Houston. That's why it makes San Antonio and Houston, to give them maybe even a whole new look because of all the litigation, or not litigation, but the trademark issues. So Houston seems likely. XFL was not in Orlando because the AAF was there. The XFL was not in San Diego because the AAF was there. I mean, the AAF was there while they were paying all these people to do all the research and come up with the logos. So that's why they stayed away from that. So now it's open ground. I mean, LA was kind of meh. I'm not a big fan of the LA sports market ever. So I think San Diego would be a great move. They could get that same energy that St. Louis got. I think you would get the same energy in San Antonio. And you're not playing in a college stadium that you could play in a dome. And then I'm always sketchy about Florida as a sports town. I don't think it's very strong in baseball, even with Tampa Bay and Brady. And I'm sure that clearly that helps in winning the Super Bowl. Does that translate for the Tampa Bay Vipers? And I think Orlando would seem to be a spot, and you can bring Spurrier back perhaps and have him in Orlando. That's it. I cannot see Mexico. I cannot see Canada. I think the chatter pisses everybody off about the XFL in Toronto moving to Argos. I think that was done once Genius Sports came into town for the CFL. If I'm a CFL and if I'm in the Toronto Argonauts and I can't wait to jump to the XFL, I'd still have to see what happens with Genius Sports before I do anything. So I think I just don't think the XFL wants to. I mean, you're trying to survive that first year. Do you really want to throw on 2 new teams? Even though as exciting as it would be, put a team in Mexico, I just think you play it safe the first year. And when The Rock says new cities, new teams, I think that's what he means. Now, he also said, if you saw his Instagram post, he said there was 2 other things. New alignments. And there was another one. New alignments and new innovations or something like that.
I'm looking here
I think that's what it was. I think it was new innovations and new alignments. To me, what would that mean other than,
new city, new broadcast partners, new teams, new cities, new innovations, new alignment, and much more.
New alignment. Like, what do you think that means?
Well, Mike had written about being with the NFL and all that. I mean, it's weird, right? It's how are you, do you want to be a development league, even though you are a development league, calling yourself a development league? That's like when you were talking about Tampa, especially now with the Super Bowl. Like, how do you go watch the Bucs and then be in the same stadium, right? How do you get up for that and be like, well, we just watched Tom Brady. Like, we're going to go watch Quentin Flowers, right? We're going to go watch the Vipers. The other thing about just real quick before I forget about Houston, one of our longest time listeners, Philip Ramirez, diehard Houston, I know he listens to your show too. I said, I think you might be a little sad because I think if they don't bring the Roughnecks back, I think, you have a lot of like diehard Houston guys and girls that'll be like, whoa, ground shaking.
Yeah. And you can't, I mean, like I said, I don't think they can compete with the gamblers there. Do you want to put 3 teams in Texas? I don't think that's a good idea either.
No. You mean between Dallas, Houston, and then add San Antonio? Yeah. That's like crazy time.
But now that you say it, alignment, I think that might be your NFL clue, your NFL network. That would make sense. Aligning yourself with the NFL. Well, that would make sense.
I don't like if I'm the NFL, because I watch Good Morning Football every day. I'm a big NFL Network guy. They program all year, but it is a rough programming, mid-February on until about you get to training camps and, obviously the draft and all of that. But, there was a couple months there where if I'm the NFL Network, it's like, wow, we could have, that's a lot of, to simulcast or show or whatever. I think that makes a lot of sense because it is dead when you are the NFL. ESPN can cover whatever. NFL Network is like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. That would make sense for them, and that would be great for the XFL because they're tapping right into that. They're right in the face of that market. Now I know there were AAF games on the NFL Network.
See this before?
They were paid.
I missed.
I think there was. I think there were some, you know what I mean, like Saturday at 2:00 kind of deals. I think there was, and I don't recall what the ratings were or any of that kind of stuff. maybe that's what he meant by new alignments. I mean, what else could that mean? To me, alignment was like, well, is, DC Defenders in a different division? Like, there's only 8 teams to pick from. How can we do this? So that would kind of make some sense. But, we saw the Easter egg from Danny Garcia with the pamphlet, and then on top of the pamphlet. But it's interesting too, is that a lot of we haven't really seen any mainstream coverage of the XFL. It's not like, when The Rock was on TV. I mean, there were some outlets that covered what he said, but it wasn't like ESPN was talking about it, or, they started Good Morning Football. Not that they would ever, unless they're partnered together, which would be huge. I mean, we've talked about before, is Fox Sports going to really talk about the XFL when they own the USFL? Does ESPN care about the USFL if they are partnered with the XFL?
No.
So if you can get ESPN and you get NFL Network, you're good. I mean, as much as, getting NBC Sports is a great thing for the USFL. NBC Sports had the NHL, and I think the NHL begged. I mean, they got paid, but they really wanted to get back into eat with ESPN because the NHL wasn't the same. They were hot property when they were on ESPN, and then they moved to NBC. I mean, hockey is big here with the Capitals, but I mean, it wasn't on my radar at all. Once they left ESPN.
It's weird when you talk about the mainstream, and I don't want to get into like anger about, getting credit for stories or anything like that, but it is weird. It's like with this all USFL stuff, like, like we'll be talking like TV ratings and all that. And then it'll be like, Joe Blow from the Sports Business Journal writes, oh, hey, this is my story of the day. And I write, it is frustrating because I'm like, we live this every day. And I get it, right? I get that's part of it. And like, who gives a crap about, whatever, because we can be up. But it does get tiring sometimes. You're like, I live through this all the time. And, Kevin, whatever, with ESPN gets to come on and, oh, Danny Garcia said whatever, 10 million retweets,
But I've heard from people, especially when it comes to our site, XFL News. And I mean, you've seen with, your podcast and the success that it's had, that we are very important to this space, because anytime we get it wrong or we say something, like, these guys hear about it. If I was to go on Twitter right now, we have 10,000 followers, which is a nice little accomplishment. Yeah. And I said, the XFL is going to open up training camp in Hawaii.
Yep.
I guarantee you, I would get a phone call within the hour being like, what are you talking? Like, this is not even what, like, and because they would get inundated with messages and questions and whatever. And that goes for the USFL too. So I think, and they know, and we know, and we've kind of have a nice partnership with all these leagues that, we play an important role, because we're the ones that are touching the audience that is hungry for this stuff. And if we went away, they wouldn't be able to tease these things where us nerds be like, oh my God, did you see the USFL? What my daughter's boyfriend is in college, and I use my kids. I got 6 kids, blended family, from middle school all the way into college. And I always ask them where they are with stuff. And, some are more on the theater side, but one daughter's boyfriend is into betting. And we talked about the XFL, and he had heard about that. She was on the phone with him just yesterday. And I said, hey, ask him, because he's watching all the games and they're betting. He's like, yeah, I won some money last week. And he was all happy. And I said, has he heard anything about the USFL? And he was like, nope. I mean, those commercials were on, but he can do a Google search and go USFL news. And then we come up, and then he can go, oh, okay, like, here's the commercials, or here's, the people that were hired. That stuff is really not out there, except for USFL stuff is on Fox Sports. That's it.
It's weird. I couldn't believe the TechCrunch thing or Tech Check that whatever the stupid that he was on.
Yeah.
That like that got like 150,000 whatever impressions on that. Like from our just, because listener Max, had screen recorded it and like, texted it to me like via Android. So it's like, and it's not Android, but like he couldn't text, whatever. It was like the worst quality video. And like to tease that. And I couldn't believe, I mean, it was the biggest thing that we've ever tweeted, right? And it was just The Rock being like, news is coming next month. And I was like, holy shit. I mean, like if that isn't any indication of like the interest of all this, it was like, because we've been doing this for, 74 ever. I mean, it was the first tease of like, oh wow, this actually could get some traction somewhere, And
it shows you the power of him. I mean, we wrote an article that was 3 days later and 2.3 million people had watched that 20-second clip on YouTube. I mean, no, on his Instagram. The dude's got 250 million followers. All my kids follow him on Instagram. So, I mean, and that's the power that he has that is so different than anything we had before. Now, let me ask you this. If you had a choice with your leagues, would you rather have a football league run by Fox Sports? And let's just say just Fox Sports in general, a league run by Vince McMahon, and Oliver Luck, we'll throw him in there, or a league run by Danny Garcia, The Rock, and Redbird Capital. Of those three, which one would you choose?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of intangibles to having Fox there. I mean, I will say that. But you're one of, their slate of programming, right? I don't know. It's like the whole WCW when they were with like TNT, right? And it's like they're just a TV show there, right? Like they don't care about the lives, that was the whole thing that Vince McMahon hated was they're like, TNT can afford to dump millions of dollars into this, right? And I can't, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want Vince, but I do, I think the passion is there with Danny and The Rock, right? I mean, we've obviously been critical about the silence, but then we hear like, well, we don't want to be silent, it's killing us that we can't be silent. I mean, The Rock brought up the XFL himself on that show. I mean, they didn't even prompt him about that. He was talking about tequila.
Yeah. I mean, that's why, I was like, why didn't I put that on to watch? Because he set him right up. He was like, hey, is there anything else going on? He's like, well, actually there is. The XFL is coming back and all those and then to put it out there on Instagram and throw in a couple more things was huge too. And that's one dude making an Instagram post or saying something blew up your Twitter. Was articles for us. I mean, other mainstream news picked it up. I'd be so interested to see when they unleash this thing. The power that they have is one of the interesting things. I don't know if you caught the full interview on CNBC, but they had mentioned about him as an entity going public. And I was like, that's crazy. That he could be like $1 billion. I mean, he's already rich now, but for his brand to go public.
Yeah.
And to me, I was like, whoa, that's like a person. That's like, back in the day, thinking that Michael Jordan would go public. I mean, he's on that level, and to even think about one person's brand going on public, but everything he's touching, and all your little friend with the twice failed league and his sign back there. Saying that, well, what do they know about creating a football league? What did he know about tequila? Danny Garcia knows about fashion, and that they just jump in and they've had success wherever they go. And everything that I've heard from Danny Garcia in particular, because she's the chairwoman. Notice that The Rock isn't the chairman of the XFL. She is chairwoman. This is very personal for her. And this is like the biggest thing she's ever done and the most challenging thing she's ever done. And she's done a lot. So, and she didn't know anything about television or producing movies or any of that stuff, but she was a finance person before all of this. And so to have that kind of drive and the talent that they have behind them, I just think the sky's the limit.
Well, she said in that founder, right, that with the Nathan, I was like, why? Okay, let's go on the founder podcast. But they were like, it was all 28 years of my professional life has been building towards this, just with all the, but that's the thing is, and it's not, it's not a Rock Love, right, or a Danny Love, with this all this, with CFL and otherwise, it's all these critical, about that. But it's just having the power to open those doors, right, and make the calls. Like I watch a lot of Shark Tank, and Mr. Wonderful on there, right? He gets a lot of deals because he's like, you just need one phone call made, and that if you hire me, they will pick up that call, right? Whereas if it was any number of anyone else trying to make that deal, and I think that is the power with that, right? Yeah, what do they know about anything? They don't, but they know that they will answer the call when they make that, and that is, it's invaluable, right?
Yeah, and I was stunned. I was shaking when they announced, because I even thought about going to. When they were making the announcement about who purchased the XFL, I thought about traveling to where that the state that it was part
Delaware or whatever, right?
Delaware, that's it.
Yeah.
Traveling to Delaware to be there for that, but then everything was going on. I forget what it was, but then when they came out and it was like, The Rock and Danny Garcia, I was like shaking. I was like, The Rock bought the XFL.
Oh, I couldn't believe it.
I was stunned. And then to learn all about her story, and then I'd heard about Jerry Cardinale before, and I've known that name in the sporting world for a while. And then I was like, whoa, like this is crazy. But then nothing happened until the CFL stuff started rumbling.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to hold you to it. I mean, I could talk to you forever, but I do want to do a little CFL here, and then I have a couple of voicemails we need to play before we let you go. I don't want to,
okay.
I don't know how long you want to stay on, but it's been, it's 4:50. The negativity, right? It's weird to me. It's always been weird to me, the CFL thing, where they've lived forever as non-NFL, right? And getting that slight, and then here, and then there's anti-XFL, USFL people or anti-USFL, XFL people. Like, it's so weird to me. I've never gotten that. And that's why obviously we all try to cover all of this, but like that you care about this one secondhand league, whatever words, but but not that other one. Like, I don't like it. It's like, but that's the same. It's all the same. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That was a whole weird journey and definitely blindsided, because the CFL was always on my radar if the XFL and AAF weren't going to work. But the problem was I didn't feel like there was enough pull from the United States into Canada to generate any interest. I mean, I did the Google Trends research, trying to see if, when things would happen. But just the fact that they even talked to each other, brought in me, brought in CFL News Hub. A lot of our fans came over and started watching the games. I started watching the games. And I got a lot of a minority of people. A lot of people were excited to have us come in because they want more people to cover the league. And I totally enjoyed the CFL. I liked watching the games. If people would have asked me to do the deal between 3 downs and 4 downs, I would say sometimes I love 3-down football. Sometimes I hate it. It's a 50-50 thing. Sometimes I'm like, that worked out perfectly. It was 3 downs. We were able to like get a lot of action. And other times I'm like, dude, I'm so sick of seeing these guys punt. Yeah. This sucks. So I'm always in the middle when it comes to the CFL. But the first year of, us covering the CFL was, just a lot of heat on certain circles. And there was things like you can say and you can't say. And if you said something wrong, and I would always be like, I'm admitting this is the first year into this thing. Like, I didn't really, but with the XFL and the AAF, there was never like AAF people hate the XFL people. We were all just like, cool, this is spring football. And that's what I was assuming going into the CFL was like, cool, there's more people that want to, we promote your league. Yep. We help bring people from the United States and Canada to give you another source of talking about the CFL. And I'll say this, I listened to a lot of CFL podcasts in the beginning just to try to get an idea of what's out there and who's saying what. And a lot of it was garbage. A lot of it was guys that would like talk to the other guy and he'd just keep laughing about everything the other guy said. And I'm like, he's not even funny. And it was like, not really, like the quality just wasn't there. And I was like, cool, like this is a good market to come in. You came in, your guys' show to me is the best CFL show out there, interviewing all those people. Very interesting. You guys are pros. You know what you're doing. That helped the CFL. There's no doubt that helped the CFL. But it was also shocking to put stuff out there and just there was no like juice behind it. Where like when the XFL was going, I could put out a post on YouTube and it would get instantly, like 500 views, especially when as the league was going. I could put out anything and because there's not a lot of people covering it like we did. You do that same thing in the CFL, it's just not there. It just wasn't there. It was just a very weird learning experience, but that we're still all in for CFL in year 2. I mean, I'll announce it now on your show. I saw a lot of people complaining that the CFL phone app sucks. Well, we are coming out with the CFL News Hub phone app in January. So that will be there for people to download. And, I've talked about the fantasy thing. I'm trying. We'll see in the new year. I might bring on some developers part-time. If you're a C# Microsoft developer and want to make some money on the side, message me, mark.perry, or just podcast at cflnewshub.com. And you want to work on a fantasy football application. I think that's something that the CFL league is missing big time. I was disappointed with their CFL stuff, the CFL fantasy part. Which is such a huge draw. I remember talking to Oliver Luck twice. I've met Oliver Luck twice. Both times, I always asked him, like, so who's doing your fantasy football stuff? He's like, well, we're going to come out with an announcement soon. And then it never happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is you have no clue between betting and fantasy are so important to the overall enjoyment of football. You got all these bowl games. You think anybody knows the Jabroni Bowl, 2 teams playing? They don't know the players. They hardly know the coaches, but they're interested in the, gambling aspect of it. That's what they want to do.
Yeah, the CFL thing's weird. Like, I've never worked harder in my life, really. I mean, and I've ran my own business for 8 years now. Like, I've never worked harder, right? And I do, like you said, and I mean this in all like sincerity. The lack of traction sometimes that because we would have shows this year and we'd have 3 people or whatever on talking CFL stuff, mid-season, we're right in the thick of things. I'm like, this is probably not going to be a very highly watched show because there was no, our show works better when there's competing, right? When there's XFL things or there's USFL or whatever. But like for all the drama, everything, for all of that energy, and then to like have these episodes come out and be like, 300 views. And you're like, okay, I mean, and it's a labor of love, and we go up, and I'm glad that our live show, did as well as it did, right? That was, redeemed.
That was great.
But like, that is what is the most frustrating thing to me. Is I'm like, you guys need to put your money where your mouth is, because there was a lot of like, F you, get out of here, like we care and all this stuff, but then no one's watching the content, right? And especially even now after the CFL season, and obviously there's more XFL stuff in the news now, but our ratings are up doing off-season moves and XFL and all these other things than covering, the Alouettes in week 14 against the Red Blacks or whatever,
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. And I will say this, when it comes to, there's a lot of debate in the CFL world, 3 downs versus 4 downs. Anytime you mention, it's like in the XFL world, that's mentioning Johnny Manziel or Tim Tebow or Colin Kaepernick. We call it in the wrestling business, a cheap pop.
Yeah.
And you can get it anytime when you throw in that thing. I'll say this, no matter what you feel about it, it's really going to come down to if Genius Sports goes to the owners in the CFL and says, you're losing $100 million a year because you are not playing 4-down football, then it will change. And that's it. That's no matter what you feel. I mean, that is such a shock to the system to change that. Because I didn't even realize from listening on your podcast, like that affects youth football, and it affects the whole history of the league.
Everything. Yeah, all the stats throw the record books out. Yeah, that's why. I mean, I don't think they'll ever do it, but it literally invalid. It's like having an 18-game NFL season now. You're like, well, how do we track season-long stats?
1,000 yards rusher means nothing now.
Yeah.
If you have 17 games, Barry Sanders did it. What it was like 13 games.
Yeah.
it meant something. And so, but it will be where money talks. And if they're like, you are losing all this kind of money because you're not 4-down football. And here's my other thing. And again, I'll catch heat for this, but whatever. It's the facts. The XFL and USFL, let's take the USFL, for example. If Fox Sports wanted a football program that they thought would succeed and give them the ratings, that they could have easily approached the CFL and said, hey, we love your product. Let's put it on American broadcast. You don't have to spin up a league. You don't have to spend. You could have easily have given the CFL $10 million a year. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, but if Fox was willing to spend $50 million to start their own league, I think they could have gotten, and I don't know what the contracts are, whatever. Let's just say in general. Hypothetically, given the CFL $10 million, if they thought it was a worthwhile thing, they would have done it. And that's the part where I'm like, I think gets missed out. That part concerns me. Like, why did the XFL, the XFL talk to the CFL because I think they wanted to have a bigger league because that's more games and more gambling and more areas you're touching.
It made a lot of sense to me. The 16 North-South Super League, whatever you want to call it, it made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. But then the USFL goes out and starts their own league. And then the other thing with the CFL is that they're not on regular broadcast television. Like, how is the Grey Cup not on CTV, right? Is that what it is? How is that even feasible? I can tell you from personal experience, the difference between a TSL game, even an XFL game on Fox over the air versus ESPN versus FS1.
Or when it was on like FS2 and you're like, I don't even have this. Yeah.
Right. It was night and day for the traffic. And the same thing with the CFL. If it was on ESPN Plus, the site wouldn't really do anything. On ESPN2, the rare games it was, traffic shot up. So like those are the things that concern me. But I enjoy the CFL, and I think they're in a good spot with Genius Sports. As much as people are like, I think Genius Sports is more important to the CFL than the gambling part. I'll throw that out there.
Well, yeah, I don't think again.
And the revenue share. What revenue share? Are you telling me that the Saskatchewan Roughriders have a surplus of $10 million to spread across the team? What? Maybe it's $50,000. I mean, how much are they really sharing?
Well,
so that's why I think And Genius Sports, as Dave Naylor said on your show, right, that they have a 10% equity in. The CFL didn't pay them.
No, they gave them 10%. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big, that to me is huge, even compared to the gambling aspect of it, because they're going to be able to tie the two together.
Well, like I said, I think traction, it's like, and I want to get into this fan control football thing before we go. It's like that, right? It's the same thing. Like, I can tell you from looking at our YouTube numbers that like nobody watched FCF season 1. Like, I know that because I know that like the second we talked about CFL, we gained 1,000 subscribers, right? Like, no one was watching FCF except, that 45, 50,000 people. It's the same with the CFL, like you said, with the sports betting. Like, if there's no traction there for people to watch, to Google, again, don't watch my stupid face, but Google CFL News Hub or whatever, like, there's no traction for them to bet either. And that's what's scary.
Yeah. So, but I as much as heat as I got in the beginning, I thoroughly enjoyed the CFL and I can't wait for season 2 to start, with the draft. And I've said, we're going to bring back the CFL News Hub podcast Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Part of it was schedule. Like I said, I got 6 kids and, carving out a time that's consistent and what it's like putting the work in, getting all this stuff ready. It's not like you just flip the switch. You got to get things ready, and then there's post and all that stuff.
But also you see the numbers. You see a CFL weekly show numbers versus, but that's the thing too. You can look at that. I wanted really quick, and we have to play these voicemails. Thank you for being on so long.
Sure.
So you seem to be very in on Fan Control Football season 2.
Yeah. Okay. So here's why. So this is a 2-part, kind of a personal thing. I kind of like, we all remember Josh Davis. He passed away, and he was heavily involved with the Fan Control Football and working with them. Fan Control Football, when he passed away, kudos to Fan Control Football. They were outstanding to his family. So right then and there, my loyalty to them was like, hey, you know, they were good to my guys, so I wanted to be at least promote them.
Because I mean, you played the ads on the show.
Yeah, I know. That's part one. So they kind of really, they were great. I mean, they were just so good. I mean, messaging me and what can we do, and all different people from Fan Control. They were really great. XFL, we were talking about this in our chat. I mean, if you look at the XFL's timeline, you know, they talked about John Madden passing away. They talked about
Russ
Brandon, Danny Garcia, and their fourth tweet was about Josh. Yeah. So that was part one. And the other part that kind of ties all, especially during that time period, was Josh's mom reached out to me, and she said, "Thank you for letting my son shine." And that really kind of like struck a chord with me, and really, because I'm a faith guy. I mean, I talk about my faith on the show, and that really hit me, because what is the purpose of XFL News Hub and CFL News Hub? It's about giving people opportunity to shine. I mean, you know, the writers, I mean, Mike Mitchell is like a famous guy in our circle. I mean, you are. I mean, did people recognize? Somebody emailed me and was like, I think they thought I was you or something. And they were like, oh, I met you at the Grey Cup. And I was like, no, I was at home watching it. It was probably Reed. But you know what I mean? Like, people, especially watch out once, as this XFL, USFL stuff starts to take off. You'll see that thing. It's like basically giving people opportunity. And I look at the, you know, Hub football. We just had one of our guys go to a Hub football event covering that, because I get so many messages from players saying, I don't have an agent. You know, I was Division II. I mean, I get them. I mean, I get maybe 20, especially as things started to crank up. Like, I'll get like 10 to 20 a week. Yeah. Just asking, like, where can I begin? And I say, okay, either Hub football is one. I mean, the spring league was one. Hub football and Fan Control Football. Yeah. You can go and try out. There's an opportunity for you there. Now, I would like to go check out a Fan Control Football game in Atlanta. I'm a old school Dogecoin holder. You know, mining crypto. I mean, I'm a technology guy. I was one of the first people actually to ever do a pro wrestling podcast, and you can look it up. So I've been doing podcast. I mean, my daughter is 7; she's 16 now, and I started my wrestling podcast before she was born. So it gives you an idea how long. And then I've been in and out, and you know, sold my wrestling site and got into the XFL and all this other stuff. So it's about opportunity, and these guys were good to Josh's family, and they were good, and it giving players an opportunity. Now, if I hear players try out for the league and there's negative things that happen to them, like we kind of hear these things, and then guys will complain, and then they're like, oh no, it wasn't actually that bad. Like that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. If it turns out to be something bad, but I'm interested. It's a good third level type. I think you have basically you have the NFL, you have the XFL and USFL right here. I would probably maybe put the XFL a little bit higher at this point. And then there's like, the Fan Control Football, I think, is the third league. And giving guys opportunities to kind of play, the fact that whether they're paying or not, whatever the deal is with the NBC, being on Peacock, I think is a good thing. The fact that they were able to survive after just being on Twitch, and the NFT space intrigues me. I'm really curious to see how they play that. I think that could be potentially really innovative. I know the NFL will probably by next year will have that NFT space. So that's kind of, I think, is kind of cool and different. And so really it's like, the same thing with CFL News Hub. Anybody know what the ELF is? And everybody calls it ELF for guys. ELF, European League of Football. We cover that too, because I feel like, at least in the CFL, they have the whole global initiative. So we're like, let's cover the ELF league for CFL News Hub because some of those guys, and Josh was one of those guys that would interview players in the ELF and put them on my show to give them opportunity. So I'm all for, fan control football, and I'm giving them a chance and just helping them promote because there's so many players that listen to I look at the Twitter thread alone, and it's like, DB from some D2 school, or they'll send me their videos, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I can't help you. I could kind of point them in the right direction. So my stock answer now is check out Hub Football. We have a great relationship with them. Fan Control Football, good relationship with them as well. And, it's just about giving guys opportunities. I watched some of it, but last year, but I didn't really, I'll be interested to see if they can pull out something really cool when it comes to the crypto space in their league. I've been intrigued by that myself. Let's put it that way.
It's just hard. They're just so smug about it. I just wish that they, like you said, we have these layers of leagues and teams and all this stuff, and they come out and they're like, we have 1 million views, on Twitch, and I just wish that they, and acknowledging the other leagues and acknowledge, because they something the other day and they were talking about spring football, and I'm like, is it the spring football leagues that you acknowledge or you don't acknowledge? Because you pretend that XFL isn't a thing, but yet your MVP was one of the XFL quarterbacks, or now you have players that are going to ELF and Journey, right? Your star this year is not playing because they're going so you don't want to acknowledge these. You don't live in a vacuum, right? We all like you said before, we're all in this circle. They don't exist in a vacuum, but they like to pretend that they're the only thing. It's very weird.
Yeah. It's, and we've actually, learned over the last couple weeks about, dealing with how is the best way to deal with the public. And I think these guys will learn as time goes on. And, when it comes to that stuff, is it necessary? No. You know what I mean? Promote your league and be positive. That's what people want, is that positivity. And I think, guys like, The Rock brings that positivity. I think they'll expect that. I think the USFL will too, but Twitter sphere is a cesspool at times, and you don't want to add to the cesspool. But I don't retweet any of that stuff. But when it comes to, player tryouts or the league or some of the things that they're doing behind the scenes, I'll definitely promote that out. And I'll see, I'm up there and I'll get an NFT and see what the deal is. And I'll explain to you and Paul how it all works and why it's beneficial, or
get
why
those shoes, get the fancy shoes. You got to get the guy's holding a different football. I don't get, Twitter, I have the monkey with the eyeballs falling out, or I have the monkey without a skull, or, it's very weird. All these NFTs are very weird.
It's new thing. Cause I've been a technology person. So anytime there's new technology, like Dogecoin came out, I was mining Dogecoin in 2013, 2014, when it was a fraction of a fraction of. I built the computer miner, and so when the NFT space, and I've known about it for a while, started to grow, and especially when it comes to sports. So I bought some NFTs from the NBA, so they have an NFT thing, and I explain it to people. The one thing I will say this, and so I might have told this story before. I don't think I have. So when it comes to NFTs and people are like, I don't get it. What's the big deal with NFTs? Why would I want that? My kids would say the same thing. So one of my daughters is a huge Flash CW fan, loves the show, posters, the whole thing. And I was telling her, I was like, oh, you could do this with it. And then she's like, why would I could just take a screenshot of that. Yep. Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't make any sense. I was like, well, yes, you could also take a screenshot of the Mona Lisa, but you can't sell the Mona Lisa. You can't sell that screenshot. So owning it, you actually have ownership, and it's verified by the blockchain. So you can sell it, but you can't sell a picture on your computer. But you can show it on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I said to her, well, what if I could offer you, if they were going to sell the first 30 seconds of the Flash's first episode, would you buy that? Would you want to own that? And she's like, oh my gosh, yes. I was like, would you pay $1,000 for it? If you were one of 20 or, even 1,000 people who own that one clip, would you do that? And she's like, oh my God, yes, I totally would. So it's a kind of collector's thing. I mean, would I buy Beanie Babies? No, I would do nothing with Beanie Babies, and they kind of disappeared.
We have a lot
my
of
kids
Beanie
were
Babies.
into what was the other? Not Garbage Pail. The Garbage Pail Kids was
that
my
was
generation.
80s. That was 80s.
No,
but we have
what was
Pogs. We have Pogs, like Magic cards, Pokemon cards. A lot of that stuff.
Pokemon. Oh no, what was? My girls all collected it, and it lasted for like a year or two, and I can't remember them. They were like little plastic things, and now you couldn't get them anywhere. But anyway, it's kind of like that collector's thing. And what's nice about NFTs is, like, if you were to create an NFT of you and I, so let's say if we had an NFT of when you walked, when I was doing that live stream with Connor Falk, and you walked behind me, and I made that into an NFT and said, hey, I'm going to sell, 100 copies of this for $1,000 to people. And they're like, oh yes, the first time Mark and Reed ever met. This is, I want that. And there might be one or two guys that would pay $100 to it. There's some hardcore fans out there. If they were able to sell it. So number one is that they would own it. Yes, I could screenshot it, whatever, but I can't sell it. They could go on the market and then they could sell it. One of the nice things about NFTs is, and for content creators, is that if you sell that item, the content creator gets a kickback. So if you were to paint a picture and you sold it at a gallery for $200, and then that person took that picture and sold it for $1,000, the original person who made the painting gets no cut of the action. In the NFT space, the original creator, which makes this whole totally a different paradigm shift, is that the content creator will always get a cut anytime that object is sold. And that makes it so different now and so interesting for these leagues because, I mean, I was thinking about the NIL, like whatever that
the
name, image, likeness.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, well, that's going to impact, how the USFL is going to sign people or the XFL is going to sign people. And I was like, actually, this is really going to take things to another level because let's say some guy from Alabama who's a wide receiver sign an NIL deal with some car dealership, and he is projected to be drafted in the 6th round of the NFL and be some practice squad player. If I invested $1 million into your name, image, and likeness, I don't want you to go to NFL. I want you to be on TV.
Yeah.
I might be like, you need to go play in the USFL. That changes the paradigm of how that works. And what these leagues could do is say, and I think the NFL will probably do it, but they'd have to agree with the Players Association, but the USFL and XFL should jump on this first, is you could go to, if you wanted, we won't use Colin Kaepernick or, I don't know, some, a quarterback that's a decent one in college, and you can be like, listen, you'll come to the XFL or you come to the USFL. But take you Trevor Lawrence. You could have, let's say this happened 2 years from now. You could have went to Trevor Lawrence and been like, listen, you come to the XFL. We're going to do NFTs with like videos. And every time that NFT is sold, you're going to get a cut of the action. He would be like, or you can go to the NFL. Like, we'll give you whatever the minimum salary is for the NFL, but we'll give you all the, now granted the NFL could do it too, but let's just say that these leagues, so it's a whole new revenue generation thing for sports that's never been out there before. And I think it's really innovative that Fan Control Football is jumping on it because it's smart, because they would need that kind of revenue. It's just if they can execute it well is the question.
Well, we'll have to see. That was you're on this. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. We got a couple of voice messages really quick before we let you go. We have super fan of the show, of your show and mine, Zach. Zach is a little under the weather right now. Things happening. Hopefully. So, we're hoping that Zach feels good, but we have Zach has a message. He when I posted the promo, he messaged me. He's like, holy crap, I can't believe that. I'm like, all right, here we go. So Zach, here we go, Zach. Of course, no, it's buffering. We will do that.
Quick question for Mark Perry. If all three leagues were to merge, how would you go about deciding who America's team was?
Oh, it's very simple. It's still the DC Defenders.
DC Defenders.
No matter what, that is America's team, and that's it. That would be I mean, and I know you guys have talked about this before. I've talked about it before. I just can't see the USFL and XFL running side by side for more than 5 years without merging. I just can't. I can't see it.
I think the word merge is in the vernacular because of the CFL stuff. I think that is why I don't think I think if those talks hadn't have happened, I don't think we would be talking merging any of these leagues right now. I think it's that put this in, it mind planted in, everyone.
Yeah. I mean, and they could just let the other one run out. But I mean, the 5 year, it'll be so fascinating to see where the CFL, XFL, and USFL are in 5 years from now.
I think if you go back, I think there's an early read review of Week in Review that says something like the XFL, the Dragons are America's team or something. I think if you go back, I think there's probably one of those. All right, we got one. Kevin's a longtime listener. Kevin's from Australia.
All right.
Hey guys, it's Kevin. Hope you're doing well. As a big XFL fan and a very, very casual CFL follower, my question is in regards to the XFL and CFL merger talks. Do you guys believe that these talks were more trouble than what they were worth?
Yes.
With the XFL, the CFL talks pushed back the start of the season, and it also brought up more criticisms and more questions from the CFL community. Reed probably has an idea of how I feel about the CFL community. And for the CFL, the XFL talks just influenced in so many ways, with Toronto, potential teams moving, and the potential rule changes, all that. Do you guys believe that these talks were worth it, and should it have happened in the first place? Thanks, guys.
I think it was absolutely worth it. I think it was worth it for the CFL because they were kind of status quo. This kind of forced them, the owner's hands to be like, okay, put your money where your mouth is. What do you want to do? I think the XFL laid out all of the ideas that they they basically threw every single angle at the CFL. I think the CFL, it gave them an opportunity to learn. I don't think Genius Sports would be involved with the CFL if the XFL wasn't there. And I think in the long run, I think that helped force the hand of the owners along to really take a look in the mirror and do something about that. I think it helped the XFL because you don't want to put a league going on with everything that's going on right now. I think it sucked, and that we were all hoping for it to come back. But if you're trying to start a football league, especially, I just couldn't even imagine. The logistics that are going to happen for the USFL, and they're in a hub city. The XFL, and with the things that's going on with the NFL, you saw Jordan Time, who is now PJ Walker's backup, whatever. It's just been nuts. Crazy. Josh Johnson played for the Jets, then 2 weeks later was playing for the Ravens. So I think in that aspect it helped. We were getting rumblings that there was some kind of talks before it became official, and we didn't believe it because we get stuff comes in and people are saying stuff, and if I get something that's juicy, I reach out to Mike as my guy, and we had gotten something 2 weeks that was pretty juicy, and I was like, I can't be like this random dude. But then it came out and I was like, wow, that's a ballsy move. And my fear that the reason why the XFL did it was because they couldn't get a TV deal at the time. That's what I was fearful of. Because then when the talks dropped, then I was like, well, because that's the benefit for the XFL is to increase your base so you have more teams, and it's an easy win. But it's a very difficult thing to accomplish when the rules are so different, and the amount and the time of year they play. I still think, and I threw this out on my show, I know that the timing of the leagues and one starts here and one. Let's just say, for example, they both wind up finishing at the same time of year. Genius Sports says, you know what, really, you should be done by Labor Day. Like, don't try to play games into November because statistically, this is what we found. You'll make more money. And the league's like, oh, okay. If they played simultaneously, you potentially could have a CFL and XFL game played. And my theory of the way to do it is if you were to have them play a championship, it would help both leagues because it would generate interest. It would force CTV to put that game on. You would say, hey, this is your game and it's going to be on CTV. It's not going to be on TSN. So that would help the CFL. It would generate interest from both leagues. But you could play CFL rules. Why not have? Could you imagine if, let's say, my DC Defenders were playing my Hamilton Tiger Cats, and Mike O'Shea they lost in the championship game, and then he came over and worked with the DC Defenders coach to prep the team, and they got 2 weeks before they played each other in Toronto in a global championship game. Or the reverse was like, DC Defenders beat the LA Wildcats and, the head coach, what's his name? That was the head coach of the LA Wildcats.
Winston Moss.
Winston Moss then went and helped the CFL team in the United States. You know what I mean? They trade coach. Like, it could work, and it would be something that would really generate a lot of interest in both leagues. So I don't think and that's just, super fantasy football stuff. Settle down, CFL fans. I'm not like 100% serious. I'm just saying it's plausible, and it would be kind of fun. And I hope that in the future they try to do something together. But I understand the CFL side. It's like, you guys haven't done anything, so we're not going to change our whole business for a league that hasn't finished one season. So that totally makes sense too.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing, I think the CFL, our podcast too was also a beneficiary of these talks, but the CFL definitely gained the most. I mean, just in terms of, I think that the XFL was probably going to do whatever their plan was anyway. And like you said, I think it stuck a fire under their butts and got them to kind of figure out the stuff they needed to, we got to clean house here. We got guests coming over for dinner. We got to pick up everything. Like, I think that years of just like, rust and wear and tear or whatever had kind of built up. So,
yeah.
Last questions from Paul.
Hi, I'm just wondering about the USFL. Do you think that with their focus on younger players that there might be an artificial age limit attached? Just like to know your thoughts on that.
Because you had been talking about that, I think, on one of your episodes about the Brian Woods, and he was on the Zoom call and all of that, and talking about how they're going to target players like right out of the transfer portal, right? Basically not getting like the Johnny Manziels that are 7 years out of the league or whatever. Yeah,
that was an interesting thing that he had put out there. And I was surprised. Now, I mean, Manziel I haven't heard if he's playing in fan control football or, if the USFL is calling. I found it so interesting that, and I had even wrote about this a little bit, about Cardell Jones getting interviewed by TMZ Sports.
Yeah, we talked about it. Nuts.
And the fact that now TMZ is owned by Fox. How the fact that TMZ reporter did not ask him about the USFL I found it so strange. However, the reason why it might have not have been brought up, as I thought about it later, was because the USFL said we're not interested because they're not looking for those type of players. So I think, and I've always said, like, I think there's absolutely need for a spring football league. Anybody suggests that college football is all you need as a feeder system is incorrect. Tell me how you were at the age of 22 versus the age of 26. I was a completely different person. So give these guys a chance to grow up and mature and play and get some good coaching, high level coaching, and they could easily jump back in the NFL at 26 or 27. We've seen, quarterbacks playing until their 40s. So I absolutely think it's a necessity. And I think going after those player transfer portals, I mean, there is an opportunity to make more money than just your salary if you got the name, image, and likeness stuff going on for you. If there's NFTs, shirts. One of the weird things about the XFL was that they weren't allowing the players to have their own jerseys. I'm like, how many PJ Walker jerseys would have sold We had to kind of make our own and get them shipped in from China.
Yeah.
So if the USFL gives those guys an opportunity to make some money on the side, I mean, the name, image, and likeness helps the college football game. And then we would have been interesting to see if that wasn't the case and the USFL and XFL were positioned where they were, what impact it would have had on college football. And I still think they will. And I did find it fascinating that not only the players, they were looking for younger players and not the retreads looking to cash a paycheck, but also Mike and Mitchell had said too, like the younger coaches, which I was really surprised about.
Well, Cardell is still waiting on an NFL call. If you listen to the interview, and we had said, Paul and I on our show, I said, if 35-year-old Josh Johnson played for 2 different NFL teams this year and 29-year-old Cardell Jones was not called at all, that tells you, that tells you, I think, what we need to know about that.
And I'll just say this about him. I mean, and in the article, I talked about the curse. The first 2 weeks, 200 plus yards, 2 touchdowns each game, looked fantastic. We were chanting MVP. Yep. Then he went to see Sonic the movie. Everything tanked. But from what I heard from people inside of the DC Defenders is that they were always, and I met Tyree Jackson, and he is a huge guy. I mean, he's 6'7", and Pep Hamilton. And they were already at that time wanting Tyree to be their starting quarterback. So that gives you an idea of that. I was told that from that point on, when Tyree came in, and he didn't look that great against St. Louis, but they barely won.
They ran it all the time. It was like the running game. Yeah.
But the idea was that the DC Defenders wanted him to be the quarterback for the rest of the year. So Cardell, I mean, if DC didn't want you, and Pep Hamilton's a fantastic coach, and there was things where I heard stuff about potentially Cardell having issues on the sidelines and kind of whining and whatever. I mean, you got Pep Hamilton. I don't want to see a guy lose his job with the Houston Texans, but I would love to see him lose his job with the Houston Texans and come back to DC, because I think he was a great coach and could have really done some big things there. So Tyree Jackson was supposed to be the guy going for the rest of the season. Who knows if they would even gotten rid of Cardell Jones? They did get rid of, one of the guys who used to play for the Ravens, and he played decent, and all of a sudden he disappeared. I was a safety.
And all
of a sudden they cut him, and I was like, wait, he was starting and he was good. I mean, Cardell might not make it. So I don't know, but maybe my conspiracy theory, especially the fact that TMZ and Fox, is that maybe he did reach out to USFL and
they don't want him.
They don't want him.
I agree with that. I think that's probably true. Well, Mark, this has been a super. I think it's the longest interview we've done. We certainly eclipsed Mike Mitchell's. Yeah, we Mike and I did an hour 8 last week. We're at an hour 30. So I think Paul is going to see this audio clip and be like, "What is happening?" But I think this was good. We tackled a lot of stuff. Year end, hit on all the stuff, and so I appreciate your time and hopefully. I think it's all ship sailing here in 2022, so I think it should be good.
I tell you, buckle up. I remember when I was super excited when the Super Bowl hit and we saw XFL commercials for the first time and the site was blowing up. I think January and February are going to be off the charts because we have USFL, XFL news, and then throw in CFL. I mean, they're not too far off from starting their camps.
I know, because everything's late. It's good. I like that. Like CFL ended really late, so now they're picking back up. It's like it's way less of an off season, so that's good. But
so you all football fans, buckle up and remember, don't take this too seriously. This is fun. This is supposed to be fun. If you're upset and you're one of those people that get pissed off at stuff, then go read a book or something. This is fun. Remember, sports are supposed to be fun. It's not that serious. Because at the end of the day, and I've said this story before, I was there watching the Ravens win the Super Bowl, and this was fantastic. Joe Flacco, Ray Lewis's last game, won the Super Bowl. My life was the exact same the next morning. I had to get up and go to work, just like everybody else. So sports is just fun. Remember, folks, it's fun.
All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll be in touch. This was fun.
All right, man.
Welcome back. Thanks to Mark Perry for dropping in and spending some time with us here on the Markcast. Of course, we do provide our podcast available right there for Mark's, XFL News Hub.
And I think that we're going to start being pushed out on CFL News Hub as well. I think Mark and I have been talking about that because I think the idea was always like there would be another sister or whatever podcast that would go on the CFL News Hub, and it's hard. So I think Mark and I were talking about that, but I think we're going to be included in that kind of that family, and we're already with those writers and everyone else, so it'll be good to kind of be on both sides of that. So
and again, that's we just solely provide a podcast to help beef up the XFL News Hub family. Again, we don't work for Mark. We do our own thing over here. So with that being said, the big news last week, of course, The Rock showing up on CNBC. More stuff about The Rock now. Jeez.
Well, so he posted his video, right? He posted the interview, 2 million views, right, on the clip, as of when we, got the article and all that stuff. In retrospect, I shared a clip of it. Our views got 18,000 views. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at for our Twitter account. We also crossed 3,000 Twitter followers. Thank you very much for that, everyone. But yeah, anyway, just, that we laugh about this, right? Like, well, they can just turn on the marketing, but Jesus, I mean, look, you get 2 million views on a 15-second clip of the CNBC. I mean, there's reason that people say, like, you can't just turn it on. I'm hesitant about that, too. I don't know if I believe all that, but, I mean, proof's in the pudding, so.
Yep, very true. There's lots of chatter right now about the Battlehawks coming back.
Yeah, this has come out. It's there's a lot of, like, infighting going on Twitter right now. We're trying to stay out of a lot of it. There's reports out of KSDK News in St. Louis. They're one of the local stations that, like, the convention center is talking to they're trying to get the leases back together because, they're going to announce all this year coming up. And it's this whole, like, rush to everyone stapling their claims right now. Like, I want it to be known that we predicted that or we said that or whatever. And so, Bruno Reagan, he is a former Battlehawk player, and then he is a host of an afternoon show there. So he's tweeted out, like, the Battlehawks are coming back. I've heard from people. So, I mean, it's one of those things, like, there's no way that the Battlehawks wouldn't be coming back to St. Louis. So, like, but it's all these, you know what I mean? It's all these people wanting to stake their claim, like, I was the one that said, to, like, have the receipts. But it's one of those, like, it's the most no-brainer thing that would happen anyway.
It's the world's worst secret.
Yeah.
In terms of XFL, like, we all assume and know the Battlehawks are going to be in St. Louis. That's the one constant we can say for sure the Battlehawks will still be there. It's just a Captain Obvious thing.
Yeah, but anyway, so there was a lot of stuff that came out, but it came to us because Mark wrote the article and we retweeted it out, and there was a lot of, like, well, you got, like, you're stealing our content or people are taking. I'm like, it's just
we cite you.
Well, and also, we always cite everything. I mean, the St. Louis, the KSDK, like, they have reporters working. I mean, everyone has reporters working, but it's just one of those, like you said, it's the world's worst secret. We all know it's coming. If they don't come back, that would be the news. If you're the one person that said, like, the Battlehawks aren't coming back, and then they don't come back,
then you look like a genius.
But it's just weird. It's just this weird. I tweeted today, like, everyone's going to be right about something. Like, let's all just get along because there seems to be a lot of drama right now.
All the time. Speaking of
your boy, did you see this? Your boy is back in the news.
He's just trying to be relevant here.
Yeah.
Sharman Jones, better known as Cardell Jones to those who don't get it. He wants back in the XFL.
Interesting. Now, this long-time listeners or short-time listeners don't know. Back, I think it was like episode 4 or 5, we did one of our what the hell is it called? The cameo. We did the cameo trick, and we got Cardell Jones to call into the Markcast, and I told him, it was a great. Go back. I tweeted the link out, like episode 4 or 5. Cardell Jones blocked everybody on everything. Was like very anti XFL. That was the feedback I got. It was like, oh, Cardell blocked you guys just because he doesn't want to deal with any XFL. Well, now that The Rock is involved,
now he wants to deal with it.
Look who's coming back around.
Oh, see the power of marketing from The Rock. Huh, interesting.
Is this totally Mark Perry when he wrote the article? He goes, "This is totally like a plan." You know, when, like, people call TMZ and they're like, "I'm going to be at the airport this day. Like, come ask me about." Because Cardell Jones, like, doesn't mention the USFL at all. He's like, "Oh, I could be back in the NFL or the XFL, or I think they're, like, launching some other league right now." I'm like, Cardell, that, like, if you're an all football player, like, the USFL is a thing.
Yeah.
Like, it came across as so petty. Like, yeah, I think there's another league coming out. I'm like,
he's
like,
clearly hitching his wagon to XFL or NFL at this point.
Yeah.
He clearly is hitching his wagon there. And maybe some of his concerns about that other league are brought up from the concerns that we've voiced about the spring league happening, because he knows the same players. Cardell's not stupid. He may be soft as toilet paper, but he's not stupid. Like, he pays attention. He talks to people who have dealt with Brian Woods in the spring league, and probably has some apprehension about that, as he should.
The interesting thing about it was because it was like the guy was interviewing him like on Zoom, and so you could hear the guy's questions, and he's like, "So, like, do you want to coach in this new league, or do you?" Something else? Like, no, I want to play. Like, it wasn't even, the questions weren't even like, "Oh, so are you going to suit up?" It was like, "So, how do you want to be involved in this new XFL?" Like, "Oh, I want." He goes, "Oh, but this is the last quote on this." He goes, "Just a few things have announced." Personnel guy. He's talking about the XFL. "I know there's going to be involved in the front office. They're pushing some sort of combine this thing in July, but who's to say the NFL won't come calling before then?" It's like, okay, Cardell. Like, okay.
Because they've called with everything going on. They've called with all the COVID issues and all the quarterback injuries. They've already called you, Cardell. They're not going to call you if they haven't called you already, Cardell. No. They're not going to do it.
If 35-year-old Josh Johnson's, how old is Cardell doing? If 35-year-old Josh Johnson's getting called, like, you get what I'm saying? Cardell Jones is 29. If they're calling 35-year-old Josh Johnson and not 29-year-old Cardell Jones, something is
a hint, bro.
Yeah,
take a hint.
Anyway, that was interesting.
The XFL is trying to patent Sam Schwartzstein's coach-player communication system that he helped create for the XFL in 2020. They've filed a patent with the U.S. Patent Office. The applicant is Alpha Opco LLC, of course, being the XFL's LLC operating name.
Yeah, this is credit to listener Max. Max sent this along. I like to, we always give credit where we can. Max was looking in the patents. What's interesting about this is Sam Schwartzstein is not involved in the new XFL. Sam Schwartzstein is not involved in the new USFL. I think Sam Schwartzstein would really like to be involved in either league if you're someone like him that's really passionate about this sort of thing. And I don't like this because it's like, well, we're stealing, we're taking your idea, but not the man. You know what I mean? Like, they're patenting.
Yeah, I get it to a point. I think that there might be some legal challenge that he might be able to file here, because there's something to be said that, like, when you create something and you're on the company dime and you create something for the company, normally in your employment contracts, it says that becomes property of the company. That becomes intellectual property of the company. The problem here is, and I'm not patent copyright lawyer. We might want to get someone on the line.
Get your boy back on. Let's
get him back on and let's talk about this. It'd be a great idea. I would interpret that potentially, because this is a new LLC, they can't necessarily patent that right off the bat. There should be some legal challenges, since this is a new LLC and not the existing LLC that takes place, right?
Well, if they buy, is like, if you acquire it,
you might be acquired in the assets for the bankruptcy sale too.
But are the ideas in there, right? Like, if we acquire, like, when we get bought out, right? When,
an idea, though, it's an actual technology that he developed and actually had, so it exists in intellectual property sense. It does exist. It can be considered part of the assets, and maybe that's their claim, is that it was part of the assets given to us, bought by us in the bankruptcy sale. Yeah. Therefore, if it's an asset of the old XFL company, it can be an asset of ours, since we picked up all the assets from the bankruptcy sale. Yeah, that might be the way around it. That makes a lot of sense.
And it's just interesting here because they wrote this out. So the difference with the XFL, people are like, what's going on? Yeah, you get the players, because the play clock was so quick, so you needed to be able to have the coaches, and they're bringing out that. It says sporting event television broadcast equipment and systems, particularly for football games, picks up live audio from the team's coaches for inclusion in the broadcast of the game, thereby greatly enhancing the viewing experience for television viewers of the game. The audio feeds can include always-on microphone pickup from each team's head coach, as well as offensive and defensive play calls, so the radio from each team's assistant coaches to players on the field. Like, that doesn't even seem like something you can patent. We leave the mics on.
No, it depends on, did he develop a frequency? Did he, did he put it on different frequency? Did he actually wire the things together himself, the prototypes, and then there's a lot of questions to be asked about this. I'd be interested to dig into this and see what's going on. Maybe we could get our copyright / patent attorney. I don't remember his name, but
what was his name? It's on there.
We found him randomly. I was doing a Google search, and he was the first one that replied and was agreeing to con, and might want to reach back to him and see what he thinks about this. I'll send an email out.
But cool. the last point about it, I just feel bad for Sam, because I would like Sam to be brought back and not, I would like him to be included in this.
Of course. Speaking of more XFL news, Jordan Tamu has signed with the Panthers to join PJ Walker.
Crazy.
Interesting.
Crazy.
So basically, he signed with the Panthers, and they're not going to play either one of these guys. That's what I'm reading.
Yeah, Darnold's starting this week, I heard.
Like, it's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
What is Matt Rule doing?
I don't know. Matt Rule is, I tweet, I mean, he said he released, like, he has a plan. It's like
a 7-year plan.
Your plan is walking out the door. I mean,
bro, there's no 7-year time frame for head coach of the NFL. You get it done within the first 3 years, if that, unless you're Urban Meyer, you get it done in the first 3 years and you're done. Like, if you can't get it done, you're done. There's talk now that Pete might not come back to the Seahawks. And he gave the Seahawks their first, legitimate. I mean, you can talk about the Pittsburgh one till you're blue in the face, how that was screwed over. But, he provided the Seahawks with their first Super Bowl win and almost was moments away from a second one. And now they're talking about moving on from Pete. So the what have you done for me lately stuff in the head coaching realm doesn't give you 7 years, Matt. It gives you 3 tops, if you're lucky.
Pete's decision to throw that ball, the course that had over the last 7 years, and like Richard Sherman, all those guys losing faith in him, is astounding. That one, I mean, this is like destroyed the Seahawks franchise for years.
There was a stat that someone provided to me that kind of made sense, but I didn't look as many. There was a stat that was provided to me by a friend that watches this crap religiously. He's like a big stats guy. He actually said that Marshawn Lynch had less than 4% chance of getting a gain with 2 or less yards in those situations during the course of the year. Like a 2% chance that he would actually get it. But it's the flipping Super Bowl. And I say this about baseball, and I'm going to say it about football. There are special players in these games. And when those players get on and activated in certain facets, they do things they weren't necessarily capable of doing before. Do I think Marshawn would have made it? I do. No doubt. I think Marshawn would have taken all 11 Patriots players and the refs that helped the Patriots into the end zone with him. But we can't go back and play it.
Because you sent me that like 25-minute Richard Sherman. Like I read the whole. It was I read the whole article where it was like they never had the faith in Pete again, like ever. Like it was all lost the second that was done. Anyway,
that completely destroyed. And I think it went between that and the salary stuff. Like they didn't beef up the offensive line. They were lucky to even get there with that offensive line. That offensive line was trash compared to the year before. And then that was the beginning of the downfall.
Yeah.
So.
Last question, then we do have a couple of voicemails for you before we leave. Do you think the USFL co-produced by NBC, not co-produced, but NBC's carrying half the games? Do we get an NBC Super Bowl ad for the USFL?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be cool. People talk about
it would serve their purpose to boost Peacock.
Yeah. So
I mean, there's a crazy thing that Vince Russo believes that after the contract is over with USA Network, WWE is going to pull all their stuff off the Peacock. Already.
Why? And just own it again?
I don't know where they'd go, but he believes that they're going to pull their stuff off of Peacock. So Peacock is going to need some content. And if you've ever tried to watch any WWE programming on Peacock, it is a nightmare to watch.
You can't fast forward.
You can't find anything on that network. It's terrible. Like I don't know what they were thinking when they signed up with that. So,
all right, a couple quick voicemails before we go. We have a Christmas gift, or Christmas wishes from Jen, and then a couple more real quick for you, Paul, before we get out of here. And remember, the Markcast.com/voicemail if you would like to leave a voicemail. Yep. Jen has a little dead air here at the beginning.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Reed. It's Jen. I just wanted to say Merry Christmas. I was just going to type it on Twitter, but I was like, hey, let's go ahead and use that voice message thingy. Oh my lord. Speak5. There you go. Sorry. Well, anywho, again, hope both your mornings are going well. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas. Okay.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Happy holidays. Thank you very much. And then we have one from, this is, okay. Richard, though, for real. Richard, remember, won the hat from Mike Mitchell. Richard, we are the Markcast. None of us are named Mark. Richard, you're calling in again. Richard, it's Reed and Paul.
Hey, Mark and Mark. This is Richard, on Twitter. Oh, for real. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'm calling today to not ask questions. You guys always answer my question. I appreciate it. But I'm here to say I really appreciate everything y'all do about giving us the information about the leagues, SFL, USL. And I just wanted to say I hope y'all guys have a great new year. And please, please, please keep up the fantastic work, because without you guys, us fans, we don't know anything without y'all. So just want to say thank you and really appreciate it. And have a great new year.
Thanks, Richard. I thought that was nice.
Very nice of you, Richard. We appreciate it.
Two more real quick. This is from Adam. I did a call for predictions, like what are your XFL whatever predictions. Adam sent in one. Adam was very nervous about hearing this voice on the podcast.
Hey there. I just wanted to let you guys know that I think the Seattle Dragons should stay in Seattle because, for once, they had the most ticket sales in the entire XFL in 2020, and I think they should stay because they have the most popular fan base. So I'm actually wearing my snapback tomorrow just for good luck. So pray to God that the Seattle Dragons will stay and keep breathing fire.
Pray to God the Seattle Dragons will stay.
I honestly think that's one of the teams that's for sure they had to look at the financials, but that's going to work there. So I'm sure they're going to stick around.
Last one's from listener Zach. Zach found out today. I don't want to break any HIPAA stuff, but maybe something that's going around maybe got around to Zach. So I'm not trying to break any HIPAA laws, but Zach wrote us in with a couple. I have one from Mark that we're going to play during his interview too. But here's for Zach.
Hey guys, Zach. I just wanted to say thank you for all the hard work you have done this year, and wish you the best of luck as we head into the new year.
Thank you, Zach. And
Thank you, Zach.
Feel better, Zach, because Zach's a little under the weather right now, if you know what I'm talking about. So.
Yeah. Hopefully he comes through it soon and beats this stupid thing. So whenever he's fighting, won't get into specifics, but whatever's going around that he's got, well, we're sending our well wishes to him.
Love to Zach.
All right, happy holidays from us. Hopefully you guys had a great Christmas. Have a good New Year. Keep it safe. Again, if you're gonna do substances, whether it's marijuana, whether it's alcohol, and you're out and about, take public transit, call an Uber, call a cab. Don't be on the roads. Don't endanger yourself or anyone else during this New Year celebration, please. That's all we ask.
There you go. And please like and subscribe. Check out our new channel trailer video. We're really proud of that. So
Reed worked on it, so definitely subscribe, share the podcast among your friends, and also we're available wherever you get audio podcasts too. You don't have to watch the YouTube channel. You can pull us up on your Apple Podcast, your Google Podcast, your Amazon Audio. Wherever you get your podcast, we are there. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys again for watching, you guys and gals for watching, and we'll see you here next week.
Yep. Happy holidays.